Celebrities in a nutshell.
The Beatles, the phenomenon that revolutionized music. Welcome to Celebrities in a Nutshell, where we explore the stories behind the legends of music. Today, we're diving into the fascinating journey of the most influential band of all time, the Beatles. From their early days in Liverpool to their global domination and cultural revolution, this is the story of how four lads changed music forever. It all began in the working-class town of Liverpool, England, in the late 1950s. John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and eventually Ringo Starr were just ordinary boys, but their passion for music set them on a path that would change the world. John and Paul first met at a church fete in 1957, where they bonded over their love of rock and roll. John had started a skiffle group called the Quarrymen, and after meeting Paul McCartney, the two quickly formed a songwriting partnership. George Harrison, Paul's younger friend, soon joined them as lead guitarist. After a few lineup changes and a brief stint as the Silver Beatles, they became the Beatles. In 1960, the Beatles took a critical step in their development by playing in the seedy clubs of Hamburg, Germany. It was here that they honed their craft, performing marathon sets night after night. The long hours of playing together helped them develop the tight-knit, energetic style they would become famous for. During this period, they were joined by bassist Stuart Sutcliffe and drummer Pete Best. But it was when they returned to Liverpool's Cavern Club that their fanbase started to grow. In 1962, they met Brian Epstein, the man who would become their manager and help propel them to stardom. Brian Epstein cleaned up their image, gone were the leather jackets, replaced by matching suits and mop-top haircuts. In 1962, the Beatles signed with EMI's Parlophone label under producer George Martin. Shortly after, Pete Best was replaced by Ringo Starr, completing the classic lineup. Their first single, Love Me Do, was released in October 1962, and it quickly climbed the UK charts. But it was their second single, Please Please Me, that officially marked their arrival. The Beatles were on their way to becoming a sensation. By 1963, Beatlemania had taken over the UK. Their debut album, Please Please Me, shot to #1, and the band became a media sensation. Everywhere they went, fans mobbed them, screaming and fainting at the sight of their idols. They were unlike anything the world had seen before. In February 1964, the Beatles made their historic appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show, which was watched by over 73 million people in the United States. The British invasion had officially begun, and the Beatles quickly became the most famous band in the world. While their early hits like She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand were simple, catchy pop songs, the Beatles were always hungry to push boundaries. Their 1965 album, Rubber Soul, marked a turning point. With songs like Norwegian Wood and In My Life, they began experimenting with more complex lyrics and arrangements. The release of Revolver in 1966 took their experimentation even further, with tracks like Tomorrow Never Knows featuring groundbreaking studio techniques. By the time they released Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 1967, the Beatles had fully embraced studio experimentation, incorporating orchestral elements, Indian instruments, and avant-garde production. Despite their creative success, tensions within the band began to grow. In 1966, the Beatles stopped touring to focus solely on studio work. Their later albums, like The White Album and Abbey Road, showed the band members moving in different musical directions. During this time, the Beatles also explored spirituality, traveling to India to study transcendental meditation with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. This experience influenced much of their music during this period, particularly George Harrison's increasing interest in Indian culture. By 1969, internal conflicts and personal differences were driving the band apart. The Let It Be recording sessions, documented in the film of the same name, revealed the growing tensions. Paul McCartney's announcement in 1970 that he was leaving the band marked the official end of the Beatles. Their final public performance, the famous rooftop concert in January 1969, was a bittersweet moment that marked the end of an era. Although the Beatles had disbanded, the music they created together continued to resonate across generations. After the breakup, all four members pursued successful solo careers, with Paul and George releasing critically acclaimed albums, John becoming an activist and solo artist, and Ringo continuing to make music. But the Beatles' legacy goes far beyond their individual work. To this day, the Beatles remain the best-selling music act of all time, and their influence on music, culture, and even fashion is immeasurable. From their innovative studio techniques to their timeless songwriting, the Beatles revolutionized what it meant to be a band. They didn't just make music, they shaped the entire landscape of popular culture. Thank you for joining us in celebrating the life and legacy of the Beatles. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more explorations of influential figures in music and culture. Let us know your favorite Beatles songs or albums in the comments below. Until next time, keep the music alive.